can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Boy, all that like Keenan. Still got crack, they fiendin'. Flow still hot like Phoenix. Shine so bright, I'm gleaming. This off top, I'm tweaking. Fresh out the rat like Neiman. And I'm still tryna fight my demons. Cause we all gotta act like Tina. That's why I gotta ride with the Nina. Outside, it's a war going on. Make me put my hands on my head like the Macarena. They want you walking on board like Kima. And give an F to you like John Cena. Putting blood on the brand new Beamer. Tryna earn they stripes like Adidas. You get cold when you ride with the heater. It'll turn you to a dog like a Keto. And expose to a cat like a cheetah. They smoke my partner like reefer. Dímelo porque yo no entiendo. Mi gente must really need Jesus. They shed real blood. I never seen the crypt and I believe it. It's too easy. Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. It's too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Y'all just talk, don't live it. And just took that route that's seen it. And I'm so outspoken like Reason. Jimmy Neutron, boy, young G's. And I'm a self-made man out of Sweden. And it's still off top, I'm tweaking. But I still gotta fight my demons. I ain't no good, I'm evil. I ain't been clean since Eden. It's a war going on outside. Make you put your hands on your head like the Macarena. That's why I gotta watch my demeanor. You know they locking up blacks and Latinos. It's the same old game, ain't nothing really changed but the mileage on the meter of the Beamer. You get cold when you ride with the heater. It'll turn you to a dog like a Keto. And expose to a cat like a cheetah. They smoke my partner like reefer. Dímelo porque yo no entiendo. Mi gente must really need Jesus. They shed real blood.
What is up, Carmination? We are here with the first premiere episode of our brand new CBB betting podcast that we are calling Ball Don't Lie. I came up with this. If you hate it, that's on me, but I like it. But yeah, so this is a CBB betting podcast here that we're going to try to do a few times a week. Right now, we're targeting Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays about 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, which is this time right now. So we want to do this one live and not necessarily recorded because we want to get the opportunity for you guys to ask any questions you have. So if you have questions about a particular game or a particular bet that one of these guys talk about or something they're not talking about, you just want their 2 cents on something, that is why we like doing these live so you guys can jump in and ask those questions. So, I mean, the chat room's open, so type in, if you're watching this on Twitter, type in the chat, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. But let me introduce two of our friends here. You guys already know Dead Prez Picks. He's been writing a lot of Bet Karma content for us over the past couple months. And then we have a new face. Actually, I don't know if you've ever seen Dead Prez Picks' face, Matt's face. I don't know. This may be the first time, actually, now that I think about it, that you've seen his face behind behind all the content. But yeah, we also have We Beat the Spread, a.k.a. Ben, who's joining us for these podcasts as well. And to kind of give you guys a little bit of, not necessarily a play-by-play, but a little bit of an outline of how these are going to go. Each one of our CBB betting cappers here, Matt and Ben, they're going to go through a few of their games, a few of their favorite picks from the games from tonight's slate. And like I said, if you have questions on games aside from them, still feel free to ask them. If they have any kind of feedback or research they've done on it, they'll be more than happy to answer them. Make sure you are following this channel, subscribe to this channel as well, so you guys don't miss it. Turn on, click the little bell icon to turn on notifications. But let's get right into it. First things first, one of the games that Ben wanted to discuss was New Hampshire Providence, which right now on DraftKings Sportsbook has a minus 13 favorite, 13-point favorite for Providence. Which way are you leaning? Ben, go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Just to start off, so I do have Providence in this one. It was around minus 13.5, dropped down about a half point. So yeah, Providence minus 13 here. Funny enough, I actually looked and the public is on Providence. I'm going to lean with the public here because, New Hampshire lost by 5 to Marquette. It was kind of a surprisingly close game, and it's a little deceptively close. They shot 44% from the 3. So I looked at the game before that. They actually played a Division III school, St. Joseph's, Maine. They only went 3 for 16 from 3. So, I mean, they did a lot better from 3 against Marquette, who's a much better defensive team around the perimeter. I think that was kind of telling as to might have been a little bit of luck. They kind of live and die by the three. So they either show up from three or they don't. But then you look at Providence, who's a much better perimeter defending team than Marquette. And I think you kind of see where I'm going here. Providence has looked very impressive to start. They got 4 seniors in their starting lineup. They're a very experienced team. They won against Wisconsin on the road, and they scored very easily inside with Nate Watson, their senior. They're shooting nearly 60% from inside the three, which is 28th in D1. And New Hampshire is ranked 282nd in opponent two-point percentage. So again, New Hampshire, they're live and die by the three. And they're up against a pretty solid defense in Providence. So Providence should pull away pretty quick and easily here, unless for some reason, New Hampshire just goes unconscious from three again and pull it close. But I just don't see it happening twice in a row against a good team like that. So I definitely think I'm going to take the 13 points here with Providence.
All right. Now, something I just did want to mention is we here at BetKarma, of course, you guys have seen it all of our podcasts and look at all of our articles and stuff, which you can find for free on betkarma.com. Is something we like to do is kind of transparency on unit size or bet size. So for you personally, Ben, for when you just looking in the grand scope of whenever you take just a straight up spread on a team, for Providence right now minus 13, would you say you are heavy, average, or light on your bet for minus 13?
Definitely average right now for college basketball. I've been doing a few max plays, which for me is only 2 units. I try to stick to 1 and 2 unit plays. And so definitely right now, still early in the year, I'm only playing 1 unit. There's quite a crazy games yesterday, and I think it's a little too early in the year to start laying anything super heavy. Maybe more 2 unit plays as the year goes on, but definitely 1 unit on Providence. Like I said, New Hampshire could just go unconscious again, 44% from three. So I don't want to lay anything too big on it, but 1 unit play for sure.
All right, so let's go over to one of Matt's, a.k.a. Dead Prez picks. Remember, we put the Twitter handles underneath their faces to make sure you guys are following these guys. They, of course, are doing a lot more content than just being on this podcast and talking about CBB bets, so make sure you guys are following both of them on Twitter. But yeah, so Matt, a.k.a. Dead Prez, he has been writing content for us on betkarma.com. If you have not peeped his articles and all the other content on there, betkarma.com. Just save it as a bookmark. Check it every single day. We have articles dropping daily across multiple sports. But one of the first ones you wanted to talk about, Matt, was the DePaul-Rutgers game, which right now Rutgers on the road are a 3-point favorite. So out of everything bet-wise that game is offering, what are you targeting for that?
Yeah, so for me, in this game, I do like the dog here a lot. I do like backing a lot of home dogs in college basketball in general, but this DePaul team has been impressive in the young season. Rutgers had a lot of turnover in the offseason. We know they kind of went on a little bit of a Cinderella story type run for them, right, making the March Madness tournament for the first time last season. So they did lose Miles Johnson, their big man. He transferred to UCLA. Also, their starter guard, Jacob Young, he moved over to Oregon. So they did lose a few of those really big pieces to their team. Now, they did return Gio Baker and Ron Harper Jr., but this isn't as good of a Rutgers team, I think, as we saw last season. DePaul on the flip side, they finally made a head coaching move. Now Tony Stubblefield is their guy who's going to be leading them. So it's kind of a new look DePaul team. Javon Freeman-Liberty, he's really been the catalyst for them so far this season. I think he's one of the most talented players in the Big East. And getting them as a home dog here today, guys, I'm going to ride them with the points. Taking DePaul plus 30. I do think they win this thing outright, but I think this is a very back-and-forth game. And in a game like this, I don't see any reason to lay with the points, especially on a road team in Rutgers, who wasn't all that impressive. I favored Rutgers last game in the first half against NGIT, and they actually lost the first half outright. Now, they did come back and win that game by 14, but I think DePaul is the play here. Talent-wise, I think it matches up fairly even, and then you're getting them at home as a dog. So I think it's a no-brainer to back the Blue Demons here.
All right. Now, same thing I asked Ben for his one there. Would you say are you average on this one? Are you heavy on this one, light on this one? I know Ben made a good point about, being early in the season, you probably shouldn't go heavy on anything, but just you personally for this particular bet, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm with Ben there. I mean, early in the season, I do not push units, especially college basketball. We've been sticking to about half units, 1.5 unit plays. This will be a 1 unit play for me. So early in the year, there's just too much that can go on. You don't have enough to really throw big units. My unit scale only goes as high as 3 units anyway, so I do 0.5 to 3 unit scale. So it's a 1 unit play for me, but that's pretty standard at this stage in the college basketball season.
All right, now before we get to one of the other games that Ben wanted to target, we did have one question pop up here on Twitter. Like I said, guys, if you have questions, whether they're talking about the games or not, just ask them, and if they have any kind of insight, they will be more than happy to do that. But this is not one I don't think that is on our list, but Ryan Kuzer is his name on Twitter, says, do you have any reads on Clemson Temple 1/2 under 67? Seems like a lot of points for this matchup. Has anybody done any research on Clemson Temple?
That was actually one that I was talking about earlier on in the day. I didn't play this officially, but I did lean with that first half under. Clemson has really struggled to score the basketball, even though dating back to last year. They are a very good defensive team, but they also played at one of the slower paces in the nation. So I think while Temple might try and speed it up a little bit, that play, if anything, would be a first half under. I wrote a lot of Clemson's unders in general last season. So, in my opinion, that would be a hard lean for me on the first half under. Ben, what do you think?
I kind of like that one. It's a little iffy for me just because of Temple's Clemson's really like a 3-point shooting team. They shoot it really well from the 3. I do like the under just because of like what you said with the tempo and everything. But it's close. But the reason I would kind of like it is because, Clemson's the 3-point shooting team. Temple has a pretty good perimeter defense. They're probably a more defensive than offensive team, and especially from the perimeter, they're top 100 and keeping people off the board there. So, that's one aspect of it that I do like. But, if Clemson's hitting those threes, it's kind of hard. Totals are hard with those kinds of teams because they're either – when they shoot the 3 so well, it's either they don't show up and they get shut down from 3, or they shoot a lot of threes and they make them. So I don't know. That one's kind of iffy for me, but I could see why the under would be a pretty good play there.
Mm-hmm. All right. So one of the other games that you wanted to talk about, Ben, you had looks like Charlotte with App State at home, and you're also targeting a very similar bet for this one as well. So talk about which one you like there, with App State being looks like 2.5-point favorites in this one.
Yeah, so I'm actually going with the first half under 57 here. It's a pretty low number. I know that's kind of crazy. It's scary, but hang with me because both these teams play at like a bleeding slow pace. It's unreal. Appalachian State actually is the bottom 2 in possession time on offense. They take 21 seconds per possession. And that is literally second to dead last in all of D1. And Charlotte's also bottom 15 in tempo. Both are bottom 15 in tempo. The Appalachian is bottom 2 in time per possession. Neither team really shoots the ball well. They're both in the bottom half of field goal percentage, and they both have a really low turnover ratio. They take care of the ball pretty well, especially Charlotte. They only have a 13% turnover rate. All of that set up, the under should hit. Like I said, actually, what's funny is with that question that was just asked, there is that aspect of a team just going unconscious from 3, and with a total this low, it's kind of scary. But with the slow paces that they both play, they're both very slow styles of offense. They kind of actually mirror each other's offenses, where they just dribble down, they set up their offense, they get a really good shot. It's not run and gun style. So, that combined with the fact that they don't really either shoot that well, neither team is some crazy offensive output team. So I just think that this one will still hit even with the low number here. So first half under 57 for me.
All right. So we got another question pop up here in the chat. I don't even know if that's is a word, so I can't even say your name. Just a bunch of letters as a username in some random order. I don't even know what that was intended to say for your Twitter name, so I apologize. But his question is, do you think Kansas covering versus Stony Brook minus 25.5? Stony Brook lost by 22 to George Mason.
Yeah, that's one to tell you the truth. I did not look too deep into Kansas, but definitely worth a shot because Stony Brook is, as you mentioned, not the best team. 25.5, I think, is a lot. They'll still be without Jalen Wilson. I think one more game with his suspension. So it's not a game, honestly, that I looked super into, but they should be able to control. Those big spreads, though, they can get sweaty at the end. So, that's one that I would give a hard lean with the Jayhawks.
All right. Now, before we go to one of the last ones that Matt Dead Prez had for this particular slate tonight, I did want to kind of ask a question for you guys. I know I'm just kind of keeping on your toes, asking random questions I didn't talk about before the stream, but in terms of is there any, I know Ben was kind of touching on some stuff like early in the season, of course, but pretty much with all leagues, you don't want to go heavy because you're still kind of learning about teams and everything. But for college basketball specifically, do either of you have any kind of research, insight, tips, or anything like that for someone when they know they want to tackle college basketball that may not be the same as another league, or just something, if you don't have something that's college basketball specific, just something in general in terms of helping all of our viewers out with their researching practices?
Yeah, I mean, for me with college basketball, I bet a really good site, that I always look at is KenPom too. I look at a lot of, for totals like we were talking about, pace of play I think is so key to look at. So I'm a big first half under guy, as a lot of people know. That's my most successful college basketball bet, especially early season. But a lot of teams that you wouldn't think play at certain tempos. Like a lot of people thought, UCLA as a more defensive team. I was talking to someone about that this week, but meanwhile they play at one of the higher tempos in college basketball. So I think doing a lot of that research, like the little things that you might not necessarily think of, are key. So if you're a totals guy like I am, I think getting places to look at. Obviously, Bet Karma has some great tools as well that you guys can use to look at that data. So for me, the pace of play is a big one. Also, like we were saying, early in the season, especially for college basketball, it's just there's so much stuff that can happen. There's so many games. So I advise not betting every single one of the games. Always control your volume, because there's days where there's like 200 games, right? So controlling it to something that's not betting 75 to 100 games a day. I also think the discipline side is very key in college basketball.
All right, Ben, do you have anything to add on that one?
Sort of piggybacking off, like you said, with the first half unders, I think one of the more important things for college basketball specifically is, matching up styles and where does this team play good versus where does this team struggle, that sort of thing. Like how I took my first half under today, like with what Matt was saying, looking at the paces and the styles, both like to set up an offense. They take a long time to set up their shots, a lot of passing, and then, they don't even shoot that well to begin with. So that kind of thing with first half unders, just kind of looking at a matchup from that sort of perspective, seeing what kind of game do you see playing out, and then how does that match up with the numbers or the spread if you're betting on a side. How does that match up with what I think from looking at it? And like you said, there's some really good tools, websites that definitely look at stats. Make sure you're looking at something that will give you that advantage of trying to see how that game will go, like Bet Karma, or he said KenPom, which is another one I use. Just looking like side specific. If you're looking at a team with a spread, one team, they shoot really well from three, and the other team has like no perimeter defense, something like that would create a mismatch where, they probably won't be able to stop all the unconscious shooters on the outside. So they'll probably, cover a spread. And if that lines up with kind of where the spread is, then I'd say, then you have a good bet, that kind of thing. So just looking at where they have the mismatch, how they're playing. Recency bias is something that I think is taken into too much of an account, but I wouldn't say don't completely shy away from looking at like past matchups, that sort of thing. So, their ATS record, how do they play against these teams on the road versus at home, that kind of thing. So it's really a big kind of world to dive into once you start getting into stats and everything. But I think just trusting your gut, and if the stats line up with the numbers, then you have a good bet.
All right, so one of the other games that I know that Matt wanted to talk about, we have Ohio State as road favorites, 2.5-point favorites over Xavier. What bet in that matchup are you targeting here?
Well, yeah, this is one that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be on, because I'm sure this will be a super heavy public play. But I do like Ohio State here at 2.5 tonight. I think this is a little bit of an overreaction by the books to Ohio State's start, because they went, down to the final possession and actually almost lost against Akron in the first game of the season. And then against Niagara, they really struggled in that game to pull away. It was pretty tight most of the game. Now, they just blew out Bowling Green to hopefully get their momentum back a little bit. But I think sometimes in games like that, you almost play down to your competition a little bit. It's a game tonight where this Xavier team, I think, is a little bit undersized. I don't think they're going to be able to deal with E.J. Liddell and Zed Key for an entire basketball game. I just think they're going to get worn down a bit. They have some good guard play on this team. As we know, they bring back the experienced Paul Scruggs. I thought that they got a pretty good transfer in Jerome Hunter over from Indiana. We know Nate Johnson can play for them. Colby Jones. So they have a lot of guard play, but their big man play, I don't see it being good enough to really stick with Ohio State. So I think this is a game Ohio State kind of is prepared for, whereas when you play these teams like Niagara and Akron, you don't come out with that same intensity. Sometimes you can get snake bit a bit. So this is a game to me where I'm not overthinking this. Kind of reminds me a little bit of that like Michigan State game last night. Personally, I overthought that game. I ended up laying off, but I leaned with Butler that entire day. I think that line just threw me a little bit. Sometimes you just gotta trust talent, and especially in the collegiate game, when you struggle to match up with size, it really catches up. So I think Ohio State controls the boards. I think we see a big game from E.J. Liddell and Zed Key, and I think the Buckeyes get it done in a big way in this spot.
All right, now we do have it looks like we have two more questions that popped up in chat. Before we get to those, I do want to mention that if you guys live in a state that has legalized betting, which I know I feel like every month now there's a new one that pops up. But if you are in a legal state and you are looking for a sportsbook to bet on to plug in these plays, go to betkarma.com, click on the Where to Bet button. It's in the main menu. Just click on the Where to Bet. You just choose your state from the state selection option, and then you have like thousands of dollars in promos there depending on what state you live in. But we are partnered with all of the the top books and this new look legalized U.S. market. But that being said, let's go to Tyler Johnston on Twitter. Thoughts on Northern Illinois versus Missouri? Mizzou favored at 14.5.
Ben, did you look at this one? Because I'm going to tell you the truth. This is not one that I looked into too much, but I do like them as a team this year. Let me look a little more into it now because I don't want to give you a hint.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that one too much, to be honest, either. Those are two teams I'm not super sure on. So usually if there's a team that I'm not super sure on, especially two, I won't give much attention to it. So yeah, that's one that I just kind of stayed away from just because of that. So
fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I do know, as I said, I haven't been on either of these teams all that often this season. Both have had some pretty bad losses to begin the year. Indiana actually beat Northern Illinois by almost 40 points on Friday, but Northern Illinois also went into a power conference environment and knocked off Washington. If I had any lean in this game, I would lean with the Huskies. Missouri, they lost, obviously, their best player in the portal, and they're coming off a really bad loss to the Kansas City Roos. I don't even know who they are, but they beat the hell out of Missouri. They beat them actually by 14 last game. So I think it's a game I'm not jumping into, but if I had any lead in this one, I'm going to go with the Huskies.
Yeah, that's kind of the reason why I said that was my point with the no read thing. When there's two teams that it's like it seems in their first few games, one game they come into a Power 5 school and they can win. The next they don't even sniff a win against Indiana. So it's like,
yeah.
And after those two games, like, what am I supposed to take away from that? So sometimes when there's teams like that, especially when they're matching up against each other, because it kind of seems like they both split good wins and a bad loss. So, I mean, it's hard to really know, especially with a minus 15 spread. It's not like a pick 'em where it's like, oh, okay, they'll bounce back here. I mean, the 15-point or 14.5 point spreads. I mean, it's just hard to kind of pick up a read on that one for me.
All right, moving on to another question we have here in chat. Dan Smith on Twitter says Eastern Michigan +9, kind of like the money line. I guess this question, I don't know if there's a typo. How good is Northern Kentucky? That was the total question.
Yeah, well, Northern Kentucky here. Remember, it is a game at Northern Kentucky. Again, I haven't been able to take a ton of data from what they've done. They did lose a game at home by 1 point, but they played a pretty good UNC Greensboro team. That's actually one of the better teams, I think, around the country that not a lot of people will talk about because they don't get a lot of spotlight. But that game went to overtime. To answer how good Northern Kentucky is, like I said, I think it's difficult to tell so far. In a game like this tonight with a spread like that, because Eastern Michigan, they can score the basketball. I mean, they're coming off a game that scored 103 points. Granted, that game went to a couple overtimes. But in general, this is a team who can score. The thing with the Eastern Michigan is they also played Indiana this season, and they played them very tough. They took them down to the wire, ended up losing that game by 6, but they stayed within a couple of possessions of a team who I think Indiana, is one of the better teams that, either of these teams will run into throughout the course of the season, being smaller, mid-major teams. They're not playing in power conference games. So if I had any lean in this game based off what I've seen so far this season, it would be with Eastern Michigan. I think you mentioned he said maybe an Eastern Michigan money line shot. Hey, the value's there in a spot like this. They're a heavy dog, and they've shown that they can compete with a team like Indiana. I don't see why they won't be able to compete tonight.
Well, one thing I want to say about that Indiana game, just to piggyback, is it's not like they were really in that game to begin with. They went actually down in the first half, and it's really easy for a team when you're on the road like that at a tough opponent like Indiana. It's really easy to just kind of give up in the game. Right. But I mean, they actually came back almost essentially. I mean, they didn't win, but they had a comeback loss, actually a backdoor cover, if you want to call it. I mean, they were plus 24.5. They lost by 2 possessions against Indiana, and that was a comeback. So, I mean, they've got fight in them, and they'll definitely fight for your money. Plus 9. It's probably a good bet because, I mean, you're betting them to stay within double digits, and that they're a team if they go down already, that they've showed the fight to get back against even a team like Indiana. So, I mean, then you bring in North Kentucky, is obviously not in Indiana. So, yeah, it's a pretty good bet, I think.
Yeah, it looks like Aaron on YouTube just said that he just locked in Eastern Michigan plus 8.5. And then before we get to I got another question here, RJ, I'll get to you in a second here on Twitter. But something else that I want to mention now, even though as of this live stream, we're still working on a lot of college basketball tools on betkarma.com. So this particular one isn't live as of tonight, but it will be relatively soon. But something I did want to mention that you need to keep your peepers popped for is our props and our odds comparison tools that we have right now. They're live for, I know MLB's over with, but it is live for MLB, but for NBA and NFL as well. So I know these guys are talking about, I like, Providence, minus 13. I like this play, minus this. Make sure that you are getting, especially like this is particularly for those that are living in those states that have the legal betting laws passed. But when you have something that you like, if you want to tail the Providence minus 13, once we have these tools launched for college basketball in a matter of days, maybe a week or so, just go to betkarma.com, click on odds comparison, you would select CBB from the drop-down menu, and then you would see all of the books that we're partnered with having the option. So even if we say Providence minus 13, you could see that, oh, hey, maybe, FanDuel Sportsbook at that given time actually has, minus 12.5. And so it's not, there's so much more money that could be made doing the line shopping than just, liking a play and going with the play. So this is not just, of course, you playing what these guys are saying, but also your own stuff as well. Always do the line shopping, especially when you have multiple options, which, I mean, right now there's an insane amount of books out there that you can sign up for. Like I said, if you're in one of those states that have passed legalization. But I will let's go to finish off with this last question here brought up by RJ on Twitter. It says, I guess this question is, Wyoming tonight, is Washington really that bad?
I'm happy you brought that up because I think yes, but it's a spot I do like Washington tonight. Wyoming was god awful last season. I think they won one or two conference games all year. I mean, they were one of the worst teams in college basketball. They were very fade in a lot of spots. And then you look at a spread like tonight, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I still think Washington, being the power conference team and being in a position tonight, I still think they're the more talented team. While I don't think they're, like I said, do they stink? Yes, but sometimes, both teams do, and this could be a good spot for a little bit of a get-me-right spot for Washington. Now, they come in 2-1, but they come in, as I mentioned, that Northern Illinois loss. It wasn't a very good loss. On this game at Washington tonight, Wyoming, they've kind of blown out by their teams. They beat Detroit Mercy, by almost 40 points. And Detroit Mercy is not an awful team. They covered last night against Mississippi State. They played them pretty tough. I got to watch out, Hunter Milando. He was one of, the only bright spots last year for Wyoming. He can play. He'll make an impact in this game. But I think this Washington team, I do think they bounce back tonight at home off of, although they've won a couple games, their games they were expected to win. It's a little bit of a disrespectful line, in my opinion, to Washington. I don't think it should be that low. And I do think ultimately Washington gets it done in this spot. They will need their guys to step up tonight. Emmett Matthews Jr., he's been the guy kind of running it for them a little bit this year. He'll have to do so again. But I would lean with the Huskies.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that line opened at. It says -2.5, but it could have been more. But it's dropped. But it seems like maybe an overreaction from the loss to Northern Illinois. Because I see it dropped 1 point. Could have been more than that because I never trust these opening lines on here. But, I mean, -1.5. I mean, taking the money line on that wouldn't necessarily be a bad bet just because what you're saying, more talent with a Power 5 team. And they played a pretty fast tempo, could catch Wyoming off guard. But, yeah, it could be partly an overreaction to the loss to Northern Illinois. And Wyoming hasn't really been tested. Yeah, they're 2-0, but like you said, Pine Bluff, I mean, they're literally the worst, if not bottom 5 team in D1. So, I mean, yeah, they're 2-0. They have 2 blowouts, but I think it'd probably be a pretty good idea to take Washington. It looks like the public's actually on Wyoming too, which is kind of interesting when you think about it, but they haven't really been tested yet. So,
did you say the line's up to
on that one.
Sorry to cut you off. Did you say the line's up to 2.5?
Well, it shows me that it opened at 2.5, and now it's down to 1.5. I'm not sure if it actually opened 2.5, but I mean that point dropping could be from an overreaction to that loss to Northern Illinois. So that's probably my guess. But yeah, sometimes with the "are they really that bad" type of thing, it's kind of like what you said earlier with your pick, actually Rutgers. Are they really that bad? Yeah. They haven't really gotten any impressive wins. And so, I mean, sometimes those kind of teams, it's like, yeah, you just have to back in those spots. But I was just looking after you said your thing about Rutgers and DePaul. Rutgers hasn't actually had a lead at halftime yet this year. They've played 3 not great teams, and they've been losing straight up at halftime in each one of those 3 games, all 3 at home. And now they're traveling on the road to DePaul. DePaul is +1.5 in the first half. So, I mean, that might be another spot to look at because if you can't be winning at halftime against bottom 2/3 of the D1, then you go on the road to DePaul. I mean, +1.5 might be worth a good shot too. I know you're on full game, but.
Yeah, it's a good spot too early on.
All right, so these typical live streams, like I said, we're aiming for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Of course, we're not going to ask these guys to be on Thanksgiving, on the holiday, nor will I be able to set things up. I will be probably already passed out by this point, hungover on chicken, or not chicken, turkey. Yeah, chicken, turkey, everything. You know what just food in general, food and booze, and watching football. But yeah, so make sure you guys, I just want to say one more time, make sure you are following Dead Prez Picks on Twitter. We beat the spread as well. We will have more faces coming into this 3 times a week podcast that we're aiming for. And then yeah, if you want to get if you want to talk to us, ask more questions, whether it's about particular league like CBB or just betting in general, and you need some tips and whatever it may be, just get into our Discord. Go to betkarmachat.com and you can ask all of us in there any questions for any sports. We got a bunch of people in there. But yeah, I appreciate all you guys tuning in. I appreciate all the questions that came in here. Remember, you can ask as many questions as you want to. So if you want to tune in, which we're targeting for Monday for the next episode, hop in, ask questions. And like these guys did on this one, they're more than happy to answer them. Appreciate Matt and Ben here joining us on this one. And we will catch you guys next week. Good luck with your picks tonight, guys.
Thank you. See you guys.